Dutton Ranch and Marshalls aren't just two random shows that happen to share a universe. They're both built around the same family, the same bloodline, and the same idea that no matter how far these people run, trouble always finds them. So when Carter gets taken by Mariano on one show, and Tate is quietly slipping into danger on the other, it's hard not to wonder if these two stories were always meant to collide. Here's where it gets interesting. If you've been following Marshalls closely, you already know that Tate was supposedly heading somewhere safe with Tom Weaver. But Tom wasn't who he said he was. He was working against Kayce this entire time, smiling in his face while quietly building a war against everyone Kayce loves. That's not a small detail. That's the kind of setup that only exists in a story if it's going somewhere. So ask yourself this. If Tom was never really protecting Tate, then where did Tate actually end up? What if he never made it to safety at all? What if, instead, he was quietly moved toward Texas, right around the exact same time Carter was being taken by Mariano? If that's true, then we're not looking at two separate kidnappings happening in two separate shows. We're looking at one connected event, told from two different angles, at the exact same moment in time. That's a massive storytelling move if it's real, and honestly, it would explain a lot about why both shows seem to be building toward chaos at the same pace. Now let's talk about why Beth and Rip would even need help in the first place. As much as we love watching them handle situations on their own, taking down an entire cartel is not something two people can realistically do, especially when the man running that cartel is someone as patient and calculated as Mariano. This isn't some low-level criminal who panics under pressure. This is a man who has spent years building control, using fear, and making sure every move he makes is protected. Beth and Rip going up against him alone isn't brave. It's dangerous. And I think the writers know that too, so here's my theory. At some point, Beth and Rip realize they can't win this fight by themselves. And they reach out to the one person in the family who actually knows how to survive something like this. Kayce. Think about who else they could possibly call. Someone with military background, someone who has already faced life or death situations, someone who has protected this family before when everything was falling apart. There really isn't anyone else who makes sense here. Once Kayce actually arrives in Texas, I don't think he walks in blind. I think something feels wrong almost immediately. He knows Tate. He knows how Tate thinks. And if Tate was supposedly in the area and never stopped to see his aunt, that's not a small detail to Kayce. That's the kind of thing that would set off alarm bells right away. Because he knows his own son would never skip an opportunity to see Beth if he was anywhere nearby. That one missing moment could be the thread that unravels everything. From there, I think Kayce starts putting the pieces together fast. He starts asking questions. He starts noticing how strange Tom's story sounds. And eventually, he connects the dots and realizes Tom is the one behind Tate's disappearance the entire time. That's the moment this theory becomes something bigger than a simple guest appearance. That's the moment two rescue missions become one shared story. Picture this. While Kayce is helping Beth and Rip track down Carter and take on Mariano, the truth about Tate is unraveling at the exact same time. Maybe Kayce ends up splitting his focus between two things he cares about most: saving a nephew he barely knows and realizing his own son might be in just as much danger somewhere else. That kind of emotional weight would hit differently than a normal action storyline. It wouldn't just be about fighting. It would be about a father slowly realizing the people he trusted the most were lying to him the entire time. And honestly, I think this is exactly why this crossover works so well on paper. It's not just fan service. It's not just throwing a fan-favorite character into another show to boost hype. It actually serves both stories at once. Marshalls gets its missing piece, the reason Tom's betrayal matters on a personal level. And Dutton Ranch gets the reinforcement it desperately needs to make this cartel storyline feel like a real threat instead of something that gets solved too easily. Let's talk about why Kayce specifically makes so much sense for this role. Because out of everyone connected to this family, he's the only one with real experience handling something this dangerous. He spent years dealing with violent situations, protecting people he loves, and making impossible choices under pressure. If anyone in this extended family knows how to go up against someone like Mariano and actually walk away from it, it's him. Beth trusts him completely. And honestly, Rip probably does too, especially with something this personal on the line. But here's what makes this even more interesting. I don't think Kayce showing up is only about muscle or strategy. I think his presence changes the entire emotional tone of Season 2. Beth has been carrying so much weight on her own, trying to protect Carter, trying to hold together a new family in a place that has been nothing but chaos since they arrived. She hasn't had anyone who truly understands what she's going through, not the way Kayce would. Having her brother walk into this situation, someone who has fought for family without hesitation his entire life, could completely shift how her storyline feels going into this rescue. Now let's talk about what this does to Mariano. Because up until this point, he's only had to deal with 2 people standing in his way. He's built his entire plan around control. Controlling Carter as leverage. Controlling how far Beth and Rip are willing to go before they break. But the moment a third person enters this fight, someone with Kayce's exact skill set, that plan starts to fall apart. Mariano didn't build his empire by being reckless. He built it by being predictable in his patience and unpredictable in his punishment. But Kayce isn't part of his calculations. Kayce is the variable he never accounted for. Think about how a man like Mariano would react to that. Someone who has spent years staying one step ahead of everyone around him suddenly realizes there's a piece on the board he never planned for. That's the kind of moment that either makes a villain more careful, or it makes him desperate. And desperate is when people like Mariano start making mistakes. So here's the real question heading into everything else. If Kayce really does show up to help rescue Carter, and if that means Tate was secretly in danger the entire time without anyone realizing it, how much bigger does this entire story suddenly become? And more importantly, once Mariano realizes he isn't fighting 2 people anymore, is that the moment he finally makes the one mistake that ends up costing him everything? Let's dig deeper into how this rescue might actually unfold, because I don't think it happens quickly or easily. If this show wanted an easy resolution, they wouldn't have spent an entire season building Mariano into someone this dangerous. I think the first thing that happens once Kayce arrives is a slow, tense build-up rather than an immediate confrontation. Beth and Rip have likely already tried and failed to get close to Carter without putting him in more danger. Mariano isn't the type of man who reacts well to pressure, so any wrong move could get Carter hurt instead of rescued. Kayce, on the other hand, brings a different kind of approach. Instead of charging in the way Beth might want to, I think he pushes for patience. He's seen what happens when people rush decisions in dangerous situations, and I think part of his role in this story is reminding Beth and Rip that emotional decisions get people killed. That tension alone could create some incredible character moments, especially between Beth and Kayce, 2 people who love each other deeply, but process danger in completely different ways. At the same time, I think we start seeing cracks form inside Mariano's operation. The moment someone new enters the picture, people around him start reacting differently. Maybe some of his own men start questioning his judgment. Maybe Wakan starts noticing his father's grip on the situation isn't as tight as it once was. Villains like Mariano don't usually fall because of one dramatic showdown. They fall because the people around them slowly stop trusting them, and I think that's exactly the kind of slow burn this season could be building toward. Now here's where things get really interesting. What if Kayce's arrival isn't just about helping Beth and Rip, but it also forces him to face something about his own past? Kayce has spent years trying to protect his family from violence, trying to give Tate a different life than the one he grew up in. If he suddenly finds himself back in a world of cartels, kidnapping, and impossible choices that has to affect him, I think we could see moments where Kayce questions whether he's bringing danger back into his own life by getting involved, especially once he starts suspecting Tate might already be caught up in something similar back on Marshalls. That internal conflict could be one of the most powerful parts of this crossover. Imagine Kayce fighting to save Carter while quietly terrified that the same kind of danger might already be closing in on his own son. That's not just an action storyline anymore. That's a father's worst fear playing out in real time, even if he doesn't fully realize it yet. Let's talk about Beth for a second, because I think her arc benefits the most from this reunion. Beth has always been someone who pushes people away before they get too close, someone who convinces herself she has to handle everything alone because that's the only way she's ever felt safe. But having Kayce there, someone who has never once turned his back on this family no matter how messy things got, could be exactly what she needs. I think we might finally see Beth let her guard down just slightly. Not because she's weak, but because for the first time in a long time, she isn't the only one fighting, and Rip, I think, respects Kayce immediately. Rip has never needed to be the smartest person in the room, but he values loyalty above almost everything else, and Kayce represents exactly that. I think we could see an unspoken understanding form between them. Two men who would do absolutely anything to protect the people they love, working side by side without needing to explain themselves to each other. Now let's shift focus toward Mariano, because I don't think he stays calm once he realizes what's happening. A man like him thrives on control, and the moment that control starts slipping, I think his patience starts running out. I could see him escalating things, maybe using Carter as a more direct threat, maybe making moves that show just how far he's willing to go to keep the upper hand. This is where the tension in Season 2 could really start to build, because now it's not just about rescuing Carter anymore. It's about making sure Mariano doesn't do something irreversible before that rescue happens. At the same time, I think we start getting small hints that Tate's situation on Marshalls is connected to everything happening in Texas. Maybe there's a phone call that doesn't go through. Maybe there's a location that doesn't match up with what Tom claimed. Little details like that could slowly build suspicion, both for the audience and for Kayce, until the truth becomes impossible to ignore. If this crossover really does happen the way I'm imagining it, I think the moment Kayce realizes Tate is missing too could be one of the most intense scenes of the entire season. Picture him in the middle of trying to save Carter, already stretched thin, already dealing with a dangerous cartel boss, and then getting the confirmation that his own son has been taken as well. That kind of gut punch moment is exactly the type of storytelling that keeps people talking for weeks. From there, I think the story naturally splits into two rescue missions happening at the same time, connected by one family trying to hold everything together. Beth and Rip continuing the fight against Mariano in Texas, while Kayce is forced to figure out how to also get back to Tate before it's too late. That kind of dual pressure could push every character to their absolute limit, and honestly, that's exactly the kind of storytelling this franchise has built its reputation on. Now let's talk about what happens if Mariano decides to use this moment to his advantage.